Hello, I'm back. Okay, let's see if we can finish this painting. So I'm going to skip a little bit this section and I'm going to go right to the white geraniums. And then I'll come back to this just to make it a little more interesting. Start with something new. All right, so I'm coming in here with the white and a very subtle green because white reflects all colors that are around it, that it's surrounded by. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to start at the top. And I'm using my small brush, round brush. This is the same day that I just took a break for a couple hours. I came back and let me tell you, I'm very happy with the fact that I can move my paints around. It didn't totally dry. That's a big deal for acrylics. So this is a lot of, if you notice the short strokes that I'm giving it, although they're short, they are still very deliberate. So they're not little stipply little strokes, is what I'm trying to say, I think. See, that's one. Now before it dries, I go and do the other one next to it, like this. Almost like a creamy color. Now it's got little seeds in the center, so I'm not worried about those right now. I don't worry about going over those markings because I have that study to look at and I am able to just put them back on. So you start from the outside in, and let me move this so that you make it so that you have access to it in a comfortable position. Okay. Now let me see, all of this here is going to be white. So try to make them so that you're swinging towards the center of the flower, of your little floret. So like this is another one right here. So I'm going from the outside of the petal in. See, that's one stroke. I'm coming here from the side and going in. Now these two are they kind of overlap a little bit. And that's good. That's okay because it's one petal. So since they're short strokes, I can add a little more. I don't want them to be too thin. And then now this one here, I noticed that it has some green in there, a little more green, because it's folded so that it's kind of in a shadow. Okay, so I'm trying to get that. Okay, so I'm going to need a little more green here. Go poke it. Okay, there's my green. And going into my white, because I want this area of this petal to have a little more color there to it, because then I'm going to make a highlight on the edge. This petal is folded, so there's a highlight right here, and there's another folded one here. There's this little cupped, so these petals are going to be quite green. This one is even going to be, there's different degrees of value in these green petals. Okay, so this one here, now that one right in here is going to be the darkest of all, although it's still a white. Still a white petal, but it's the darkest of all this bunch here. Now, if you need to, don't forget you have your little value finder to figure out the degree of dark and light, how much you should go. I don't have it. I can't find it, but I will. Okay, here it is. Okay, so you want to see there's a difference in the value. You put your little value finder right here. You squint your eyes and you figure out, once you lose the shape of the keyhole, then that is the right value. Like I'm squinting. Yeah, and I totally lose it. So it's a 5, this right here. Now I'm coming to my subject, and it's actually a 4. So that means I need to go a little bit darker. But guess what? Because this is acrylic, I think it's going to darken to just the right value. So I'm going to leave it. So see, you have to keep that in mind. Now we don't have to have it that exactly, but at least we're shooting for that. That's what we're trying to achieve. All right, so right now I just loaded my brush with a little bit lighter, more white, because this is where that petal is turned in, has a turned leaf. turned edge. So now I'm coming in here like this, see? Now there's another one in here that also needs to be, it's a highlight of a turned petal. Okay, I think we're achieving that look of all right, now it's I have it blocked in the white petals. This one is also a petal, but it needs to also have more green in there. So here I come. You just relax, just have fun with it. It's nothing, you can't really make a mistake. If you do, you just come back and paint over it, okay, until you like what you see. Now all under here, they're all stems. So if you squint your eyes and look at this section, all stemmy, you're gonna see that it's, if you don't look at the you look at the study, if you squint your eyes, you're not going to see detail. You're just going to see an area of a darker green, darker value in this shape. See, so that's easy. Just put color in there. Once you've done that, I'm making sure that I'm covering any of that, those pencil marks. And that's easy to do. Oh, how exciting. It's looking kind of pretty already. All right, so now I'm going to come in here with a little darker value. So I'm coming here with my raw umber. And there's a separation. It's like a branchy stemmy, branchy kind of thing that's happening here. So a lot of that is what we call negative space. So what does that mean? That means the negative space is the space around your subject. So this is the space between the little branches. Now, some of those spaces are a little bit darker and some of them are lighter. So, all right. So now that I look at this, okay, it's looking a little bit kind of sectioned off, but this petal's like little sections, which is fine. I got my strokes, but now that's like my base painting for that area, right? So now I'm going to come back here with a square shader, my synthetic brush, and I'm going to come and I'm going to smooth it out a bit. It's covering a wider space. See that? And that wasn't that hard to do. Now there's this petal next to that. It's got a little edge there, which is a little highlight. And so now this petal here, it reads as one long big one. So now I'm coming in here. I'm going over it. Okay, so now it looks a little more, not too many sections, but not that flat either. Now right here I notice in this one that there's a petal right in here. It's a little darker than the rest. So I just know what to do. I just come in here and load my brush with a little more green in it. It's kind of an olive green, a light olive green right there. So I'm shading now in this flower. Now I know that there needs to be little darker sections, depending on what petal is more out into the light. Okay, now there's one that's the whitest white of all of them in this flower. Okay, there's my lightest light. And sometimes when I'm doing this, I'm squinting my eyes to see in this flower where's the lightest light and the medium and the darkest. See? But because I already had that base underneath, it's easier to get there. I'm just covering some a little sneaky pencil marks that are still there. All right, so now we got it. Now I'm going back to my little round brush, and I'm going to do some of those markings, the dark markings in here. Quite dark. Look like little seeds or something. I hadn't noticed those in the geraniums, but okay, so that is how I go about finishing those petals and the flower. All right, so now I'm going to smooth out. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to come here to my main lady, my prima donna, which is, this is the one that, remember, we talked about. In this bunch is this one. In this bunch here, this is the one that's the attention getter. Okay, so now I want to keep smooth that out. That's the most prominent petal of this whole area. And if you notice, I mentioned this before, but you paint right along the grain. Let's say if you were doing wood grain, it's got a certain direction that the wood grain goes. So that's why I think of this as in the same way. In other words, you wouldn't be going across it like this horizontally, going into the. It makes a difference for some reason. It really does. Okay, so now we have a nice So treat every section as a little mini painting. And that's how you learn so much. All right, so I want to bring this main lady out, right? So then I'm going to come in here and do a little bit of shading around that petal. A little more color. Maybe it's a little much. Tone it down a bit. It's a little bright, but that's okay. Come back here and I'm going to glaze it with a little bit of raw umber over that. Now right between these two petals, that's where it's going to be darker. See how nicely that corner of that chiseled brush fits in there? So it's kind of a good thing to know when to use the different types of brushes, different shapes that will be helpful to you. So we're creating a dimension, right? I hope we are. So came back here to my raw umber because this little, it's like a little tunnel almost, seems like. So I want to have a little more color in there. But I want it to be not kind of subtle. So I just brushed, put a little water in the tip of my brush, took the excess off, and then just sort of blended the edges before it dries too much. So with this, you have this little window of opportunity when you can still move your paint. And that's a nice thing about doing little areas like this, that it gives you a little more time. And you start to get the feel of how it is, how long it takes to dry, and how to manipulate the consistency of it. Those are things that you're just going to learn by actually doing them. Now everybody's is going to look different. That's for sure. Now don't forget, everything's optional with me, you know that. But the assignment is we're doing this after the Klein artist, painter. She was wonderful. I think this was like 140 years ago or something. I have to look it up. I forgot. She certainly loved to paint flowers. But you want to take photographs of geraniums that you like. Maybe you can do the pinks or whatever color you want. But that's the assignment. You're going to do your own. We do copy to learn, to imitate the masters. It's always good to, it's like a little guide. And then you get the confidence and you say, oh, well, that I was able to do it. That looked kind of good. Now you can venture into doing your own original painting, because you know what? You already proved to yourself that you can do it. And then I want to see what you did too. Okay, so I think that's looking kind of dimensional. Now I'm going back to my other little brush with my raw umber on the tip, and I'm going to give it those little called little there's a name for them, pistils. Now when you use this round brush, sometimes it gets all split at the end. So you roll it and you pull towards you so that you get your point back. Like this. All right, so there, that's how we go about doing this. And then we're going to fill all this out. Then we're going to come back and we're going to do the little buds. Let's do the little buds. Is the red. Wow, this is really pretty exciting, you guys. This is, see how long, I haven't wasted any paint. It just stays open. All right, and so now I'm going to touch it up with a tiny bit of raw umber, so it's not bright red. All right, and so then I'm going to come in here, and it's almost the shape, those little buds are almost the shape of, let me see here, of the, yeah. Of the bud. See that? Almost, if you just lay it down like this, it's just the shape of that. Then pull towards the inside. So this one does, it's all green, but I'm gonna add a little red to it. See, you can do things different, a little different, or a lot different. You're just make more. All right, so that's what we're doing. This one here is all going to be, it's all green. It hasn't opened yet. So I'm going to turn this upside down like this, and I'm going to make my green, some more green. Okay, here's my yellow, and here's my ultramarine blue. I mix it almost half and half. I don't want it to be too bright because that little bunch of buds is in the bottom of the, so I'm going to add some red to it, to my green mixture that I did here. So that tones it down. That makes it like a dark olive green. Okay. So now I'm going to come in here. For you who are trying to learn brush strokes, this is great. It's a great study for that. There's an area right underneath that is almost the black because it's so close to the flowers. That would be like right in here. Just fill it in. Sometimes you need to make your brush just go up and down like this, like a stipple. It fits in a tight corner. All right, so now we're just going to add some green here. Just sort of block it in. We'll separate them later with the highlights. If they touch each other, don't worry about it because that's what they do. That's what they're doing. They're all clustered together. But with a highlight, we'll be able to separate them. So you're pretty safe yet just getting dark right underneath those petals from that flower, because that's the darkest shadows are your cast shadows. So we're not going to go black, but we're going to go pretty dark. Like it's a black green in here. So here I go with my blue and my yellow. I mix it. Now you don't always have to use your brush to mix your colors like I am. Sometimes I use my palette knife. I find that if I'm doing things like other things, sceneries and stuff like that, sometimes I use my palette knife, larger areas. Okay. Okay, see, so now we're doing the different highlights and separation. We're separating it by doing the highlights. Now this one's here is way out where there's more light hitting it. So I'm going to, that's going to be very lights and very darks. You're going to go in this area here. You're going to go almost the full, from very light to very dark. Now there's this one here. And that's how you separate that cluster. Little slashes like that, it just almost gives you a hint that that's a nice little stem. Now you want to put a little bit of green in some of those little red buds because they're not that bright, but it's all right. You can be bright and then you can tone it down. It's easier to do it that way. Like this one is just flat and bright all over. So we're going to shade the one side with the green, like that. This one is also just too screamingly bright. So we're going to come in here with a little complement color, which is the green. And we're going to tone it down like we know from our color wheel what color is going to dull it a bit. Well, the complement. So with a thin layer, we use it so that it's not screaming so much at us. At the same time, now I'm going to make almost a black green because that's where that stem is. Now that black green is going to turn into a maroon, kind of a burgundy, dark. Right in here, in between that cluster, it's very dark. But as it goes down further, it's gonna turn into a little burgundy. And you know that I think she used that very burgundy looking reddish stem because it looks so good against the green. She's a very knowledgeable artist. Could have been a green stem because they are green. I'm looking at mine that I got from the garden. They're totally green. But you know what? Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're a little maybe more mature stems. But I think it's just so pretty next to the green. See? Whenever you can do that and get away with it, you use the complementary color. It's usually going to work where you're going to really like what you're seeing. Okay, so now this side, it can even be darker than that. You know that? We can just go way darker on that one side. Just the one side here. Because that stem, it's like if you have a black, let's say this black pen, even this black pen has a bright white highlight. See? Or it's not pen, but it's a handle. But I don't know if you can see it. But even like that, one side is very dark, and then the other side where the hot light's hitting it, it's very light. So that's the same thing that is happening here. And so one side of that stem needs to be very dark, like this. And up in here, where right here underneath all of that cluster, it almost totally goes almost black. So we're leaving the on one side, it's lighter. Now we have a dimensional looking stem, hopefully. But let me see what we have here. She does have it, it's lighter. She's even got it lighter on that one side. So I'm adding some white and pink. Let's see what happens. There's this highlight. Yep, there's a highlight right under there. It's a tiny little sliver. Okay, well, I think it's working. I think it looks pretty dimensional. So I'm coming in here with a little raw umber just to smooth that out. Yours doesn't have to be as detailed as this, you know, just have fun with it. It's a learning process, and it's your interpretation of it. We are not photographic, we're not cameras. We're just artists having fun, enjoying the learning process. Of this one here. Then what you do is you go look, paint something else, another area, then look at it, come back and revisit it. Because especially with acrylics, it's going to change, it might change a little bit. The value of it's going to change. And then sometimes you don't need to do anything else. But it's just like I think right here, there's like a bud on top of this one that never opened. It hasn't opened yet, so it's just green. Now, right now, my geraniums, they were not, they had no flowers, but it was still good to see the leaves up close. I think I want to try it in this to get more, make some pink ones, some pink geraniums. I think would be nice. All right, I think I'm going to stop now, and I'll come back and we'll do the third one, which will be this here, more of the same. You can go ahead and continue. I'll just you can make them flat looking like this for the first go, and then we'll do the rest. We're gonna come here and we're gonna separate this leaves first, like this one from this one. Right now they're the same value, but we need to come in and separate them. So how do we do that? We go into our raw umber, ultramarine blue, and yellow. So we want it to be a yellow, a dark green, darker green, dark olive green. Okay, you see the separation there? That made that one right away go into the background. And you notice I changed the shape of my brush. Okay. Now, I believe there's a one here and a little tiny one behind. So there's 3 here, 3 leaves. That's what it looks like to me. But we don't, and not everything has to be explained. Sometimes it's okay not to. Maybe it's 1 leaf, maybe it's 2, it doesn't matter. Because the brain will do the rest for you. Will say, oh yeah, it's just the right shapes. That's good enough. So it's the same thing over here. Separation. Hurry, hurry before it dries. But then if it dries, that's okay. Then I can paint. All right, I think this is it for this video. And we're going to do one more, which I think the next one I'm going to do, it's going to be more like a short one because it's going to be time-lapsed. Because basically I will be doing what I have been talking to you about, what we've been learning on these lessons, but then I'll just be doing it and you can see how it comes. Because it's the same thing that I did here is what I'm going to be doing in this with this cluster. And with this little buds right here, it's going to be the same thing. This is going to be the dark shadows on the bottom and then the highlights. But I think you'll be, you can watch how I go about doing that. All right. Thanks a lot for having joined me. And we'll see how it goes. Okay? Have a great day or night, whatever. And I will see you on the next one. Good night.